This is Rogers TV.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, February 17th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 20. In Smiths Falls, minus 18. Feeling colder, though, with this wind. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Vaccine shipments destined for our country delayed due to severe weather in the United States. City News reporter Kevin Meisner with more on that, plus the school testing plans.
A Trudeau government spokesperson confirming the Pfizer vaccine shipments that were supposed to arrive today are stuck in the U.S. because of that winter weather, the cold and snow, forcing the temporary closure of a UPS cargo terminal in Kentucky. So that's forced the delay of vaccine shipments by 24 to 36 hours. The full shipments of the Pfizer vaccines now expected to land on Canadian soil sometime tomorrow. Meantime, Ontario school boards have the details now on the government expectations when it comes to expanded COVID-19 testing for students. The tests will roll out in at least 5% of all schools in those school board districts starting next week. The testing directive takes effect next Monday in most school boards. However, the boards in Toronto, Peel and York are expected to have those plans in place already. I'm Kevin Meisner.
A communications firm, Edelman, says only about 1/5 of Canadians have good information hygiene. It says that means only 20% are verifying information they receive about things like COVID and engaging with the news. Edelman's latest survey underscores a growing struggle around trusted information and credible sources. Experts say it could stop some Canadians from getting COVID-19 shots. City News Time 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Oh, we've got some cold wind chill to deal with this morning, but it won't be too bad for the afternoon. The high -7, and we'll have lots of sunshine for most areas today. Some clouds build for Smiths Falls for the afternoon. Tonight, partly cloudy, -18. It'll feel like -21 overnight. And tomorrow, a chance of flurries. Snow, though, overnight Thursday into Friday. Tomorrow's high, -4. For today, the high, -7.
And right now in Ottawa, -20 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's -17. A gunfire incident in Gloucester resulted in charges against an Ottawa man. 27-year-old Mark Abdallah has been charged with numerous offences after the incident at a home on Gatestone Private late on Sunday evening. A loaded handgun was seized along with a large amount of cash and cell phones when police executed a warrant. Charges Abdullah faces include obstruction of an officer, discharging a firearm, and possession of a firearm. He is scheduled to appear in court today. City News Time 9:03. Starting today, Restaurants Canada will begin accepting grant applications for local support efforts. The 5-month, $7 million support package in partnership with Uber Eats aims to help independently owned restaurants. It includes $1 million for grants for local restaurants across Canada to apply for. Along with the grants, the package will also waive fees for daily payout until June 30th, bringing back the in-app direct-to-restaurant contribution effort, among other features. Stats Canada says the consumer price index rose 1% even compared with 1 year ago. The annual pace of inflation did pick up. The reading compared with a year-over-year increase of 0.7% in the month of December. Fueling the increase in January was rising gasoline prices. StatsCan says they increased 6.1% compared with December, but still, gasoline prices 3.3% below where they were in January of 2020. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinions.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Adventures in commuting. The day after the big snowfall. You'd think we'd know how to drive through this stuff by now. Just about messed up the Rob Snow Show. David was this close to running the Rob Snow Show from the split in his Mazda this morning on the 417 eastbound. Chaos. Bedlam.
Chaos is a great word for it.
Chaos and bedlam. So,
Anarchy.
look, take it easy out there. Take it easy out there. I mean, the Queensway, that's in the best shape of them all, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't get by on the Queensway. But you do need, I will say this. This was my experience this morning. Lots and lots of windshield washer, okay, for that drive. And some decent winter wipers. I mean, don't be so cheap. Would you invest in some decent winter wipers, some of you people? Good morning. Yeah, I'm back. I am Rob Snow, and this is the Rob Snow Show. I've been away for about a week. It's wonderful to be back. I can say that, but with this caveat. If I can't be on a sandy beach, sipping a sociable pineapple concoction, I'll settle for you, okay? Valentine's Day is over. I don't have to be nice anymore. We got a great show lined up for you this morning. Local news, national news, international news. We're all over the place, all over the hottest issues of the day. You're in the middle of it all during the talkback hour between 10 and 11. We do that every morning. An hour of your phone calls, an hour of your opinions. It's the hottest radio in town. Love you to be part of it. Call in line 750-1310. 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Email address, The Rob Snow Show at ottawa.citynews.ca. So what are the big news stories these days? I'm kind of out of the loop. Okay? I've been trying to tune out the news. Turn it off, okay? Cut down on the doom scrolling. But I think one of the big stories, now that I'm back and I'm into it and I am doom scrolling again, I think one of the big news stories is Trudeau and China. Trudeau's, what do you even call it when it comes to China? Obsession, admiration, naivete, bizarre, ignorance, willful blindness. As of today, it has been 800 days in a Chinese prison for the two Michaels, Kovrig and Spaver. 800 days. Can you even imagine it? 800 days in a Chinese prison? And think about all the news over the years when it comes to Canada and China. Just the recent news. Has it ever been about the impending release of the two Canadian hostages? Which is what they are, by the way. They are hostages. They were snatched illegally by a rogue regime in retaliation for the totally legal detention of the Huawei executive, Meng Wanzhou, who still, to this day, lives in the lap of luxury. She's chauffeur-driven between two Vancouver mansions when she's not out on a shopping spree. And these Canadians have been languishing in a Chinese prison, the details of their well-being largely unknown. And yet, while all of this is going on, from time to time you have these news stories and they make you shake your head in bewilderment and you wonder, what is our government doing? Why is it doing some of the things that it is doing? Does Justin Trudeau or his cabinet really appreciate the nature of the menace? This Trudeau government wasted the precious early months of the pandemic engaging in a doomed partnership with a vaccine company based in, of all countries, China. Why would it do that? The vaccine candidate never allowed to leave the Beijing airport. Entirely predictable. But don't you wonder why would a Canadian government engage in that kind of partnership at all? Why would it do that? And now here we are, all of these many months later, crossing fingers, saying prayers, hoping that other countries won't be as mean to us as the Chinese government has been. And that we really can get the vaccines that we ordered, apparently in abundance and apparently now weather permitting. Vaccines from China. Here's a great idea. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in that cabinet meeting? Wouldn't you love to listen to the bright lights of the Liberal cabinet talk about what a great idea it must be? Let's partner with China. Who would ever have thought that would run into problems? You know, now we have this recent story about a nearly $5 million university research partnership. Canadian universities partnering with, Huawei. What could possibly go wrong? Again, I come back to this. Don't you ever wonder? You know, why would we do that? Why would we do that? Why would we allow that particular company to partner with Canadian researchers working on cutting-edge telecommunications technology, just given that company's reputation and the Chinese government's reputation of being the most prolific thief of intellectual property the world has ever known? Don't you wonder why a Canadian government would do that? Allow such a partnership to continue, and yet it does. And then you think, how many Uyghurs are in detention camps based on the media reports, the in-depth reporting in the Western media, the re-education camps, the concentration camps here in the year 2021. Is it 1 million people? Is it 2 million people? You have read some of the news stories, have you not? Some of the accounts of people who have managed to survive these camps, what the Chinese government calls vocational schools. Brainwashing, torture, mass sterilization, and yet our prime minister, he offers up nothing but tossed word salad. Don't you wonder why? Why? Why dance around it, Mr. Trudeau? Why are you still being so polite? Why can't you just call it what it is? What China is doing to its ethnic Muslim minority. It's a genocide. It's a cultural genocide. What the Chinese government is doing to its Muslim minority is a cultural genocide. People much smarter than me, much smarter than Mr. Trudeau, experts in these things, they've declared it as such. And yet these words shall not cross the Prime Minister's lips. Can someone explain to me why this Canadian government has such a love affair with that most brutal regime in China? So what if China has a fast-growing economy? So what if it offers all sorts of economic opportunity? Doesn't there come a point when you have to be able to sleep at night? Big story, I think. And we have an expert coming up on the program just a few minutes from now. Now, when it comes to the pandemic and COVID-19 news, I think the big story of the week remains the reopening. This is reopening week. Ontario, the grand reopening. What version of the reopening is this, by the way? The third, fourth, whatever? I haven't had a chance until this morning to ask you about how you feel about this decision by the Ford government to reopen parts of the Ontario economy, including here in Eastern Ontario. And I'd like to get back into this topic this morning and ask you, is this a wise course of action? So many infectious disease experts say it's unwise. I want to know what you think. Is it the right and proper thing to do to be reopening parts of the economy right now at this point in time? We'll do that during our talkback hour today. I keep hearing from all of these people, infectious disease experts, epidemiologists, and they all seem to be saying the same thing. It sounds like they're saying the same thing. It's probably not the smartest thing to be reopening right now. It's encouraging, they say, it's encouraging that case counts are down. But we've seen this movie before. Close things down, cases go down. Open things up, cases come roaring back. Open things up, cases come back. And the vaccination rollout, it's been okay for residents in long-term care. Other than that, well, in Canada, the vaccination program, just call it a failure. I mean, it's a failure. It's going to take, according to the latest data, it's going to take 5.5 years at current rates to vaccinate 75% of the Canadian population. 5.5 years. Don't make any plans for the summer of 2026, ladies and gentlemen. You might be getting your second dose by then, weather permitting. And yet, Doug Ford is reopening parts of the economy. Health experts are saying, Dougie boy, you're playing with fire. You're playing with fire. You're running with scissors. And they're worried about the spread of the variants of the COVID-19 virus, much more contagious than the original. Exponential growth. Do our politicians still get that concept, exponential growth? Third wave. Does a third wave mean a third lockdown? On the flip side, the longer this goes on, lockdown, stay-at-home orders, curfew, what is going to be left of the economy to save? On lives and livelihoods. Let's get into it again. Ontario's grand reopening, the director's cut. On the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or, your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Partnerships with Chinese vaccine companies, Canadian partnerships with Huawei, and some very timid language about the persecution, the genocide of the Uyghur Muslim minority in China. So let's discuss all of this right now with Charles Burton, who's back with us this morning. He's a senior fellow at the Macdonald Laurier Institute, and welcome back. Charles, nice to hear from you. Very nice to hear from you. First of all, I'd like to get your take on the idea that National Sciences and Engineering Research Council is partnering with Huawei Canada on computer and electrical engineering research at Canadian universities, despite security concerns. What's your reaction to that news, sir?
Unbelievable. CSIS has been going around to the universities trying to get them to recognize that there are security issues in this kind of sensitive research, and that by collaborating with Huawei, you're giving the Chinese regime information that serves their strategic and military goals. And so, we know that Huawei engages in surveillance technologies that are complicit in the Uyghur genocide and with massive surveillance of people in China that violate their human rights, and that they transfer this technology to third world dictatorships around the world to consolidate non-democratic regimes. Plus, of course, we don't want Huawei in our 5G here because it would allow them to allow the Chinese regime to have the capability to engage in massive cyber espionage and even to possibly install kill switches on critical infrastructure that would be controlled by this, amazing 5G technology. So it's in general a bad idea. So they've been trying to convince the universities to do that. Universities don't really have a mandate for security. Their purpose is to, expand the boundaries of knowledge and share knowledge around. But in any event, the idea that a Canadian government-funded granting agency, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, which is, the major funder of Canadian research, would be collaborating in moving at cross purposes to Canadian national security by encouraging the transfer of technologies to Huawei at a discount price, because the universities are subsidized, the professors have their salaries paid by the public purse, the NSERC is our taxpayers' dollars at work. It's just insane. And the fact that the government claims they can't do anything about it is, doesn't make any sense at all.
Huawei, though, does have a history, right, of, partnership or research collaboration with universities, right? It's a company that's, I guess I would use the word, it's embedded in the university scientific community, is it not, Charles?
Sure. It allows them to do their research and development using resources provided by the universities and their funders, as opposed to having their R&D done entirely at Huawei and the Chinese government's own expense. Of course, most countries of the world have figured out what was going on and have stopped it. But Canada continues to be one of the few nations in the world that seems to not only allow it, but subsidize it. So, why are we so out of sync with our like-minded allies, and why is it that we're putting global security at risk by subsidizing the Chinese state in what amounts to a surveillance company?
And what are intelligence authorities in Canada saying about the threat that Huawei poses?
Well, certainly we had a statement by the CSIS head, David Vigneault, on this topic, and most recently, the Liberal MP Wayne Easter has suggested that we wake up and smell the roses with regard to China. Mr. Easter's a Liberal MP, but he's not running in the next election, and therefore he feels prepared to state truth to power. People who have access to classified information about what Huawei has been doing are very concerned that our government seems to refuse to ban the Huawei 5G while all our allies have done so, and now continues to not only tolerate but subsidize Huawei's research and development in Canada.
Huawei Canada would say, we're Huawei Canada. We're We're a Canadian company. We're like the Maple Leafs. We're a totally separate corporate entity from that Huawei. And even that Huawei, it's owned by its employees and it's not beholden to the government of China, for example. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't think that the technology is staying inside Canada. It's high level technology on telecommunications that serves all of Huawei's enormous international operations. After all, the Chinese government would like, if they could, to have control of telecommunications around the world. It gives them an enormous strategic advantage. I think from that point of view, that argument doesn't make sense. And in any event, we know that the collaboration has been occurring with the Huawei headquarters in Shenzhen, not with some research and development Huawei enterprise here in Canada. So, that's pretty clear. The idea that it's owned by the employees has been thoroughly debunked. It's in fact owned by, the union, which is part of the Chinese Communist Party. So, Huawei, regardless of whether a Chinese enterprise is technically a state-owned enterprise or simply an enterprise located in China, they all have Chinese Communist Party branches at the top of their corporate pyramid, and they are required to respond to the overall goals of the regime. So the goals of Huawei are the goals of the Chinese regime. And the fact that Huawei offers its equipment at much lower prices than its competitors like Ericsson, Nokia, and Samsung is because the Chinese government subsidizes it. And the reason the Chinese government subsidizes it is it's more than simply trying to capture the market for sales, but because Huawei provides strategic advantage to the Chinese regime's overall agenda of cyber espionage and surveillance. And, that's pretty clear. So, that's the fact is that Huawei is an integrated part of the Chinese Communist state, and its employees under the Chinese national intelligence law are required to respond to demands from the Chinese military and security agencies to do what the Chinese state wants them to do.
By law. Yeah. So we're going to listen to a few seconds of Mr. Trudeau this week when asked if what is happening to Uyghurs in China amounts to genocide. This is what he had to say.
Principles of international law and the international community in general, I think rightly, takes very, very seriously the label of genocide and needs to ensure that when it is used, it is clearly and properly justified and demonstrated so as not to weaken the application of genocide in situations in the past.
Okay, so is it clearly and properly justified to call what is happening to the Uyghurs in China a genocide?
Well, our own House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee subcommittee on international human rights had extensive hearings on the Uyghur situation and issued a report to the government saying that it constituted genocide. And, there are any number of international bodies who have determined that what's going on in Xinjiang towards the Uyghurs meets the definition of genocide as defined by the first United Nations covenant when the United Nations was formed, which is the covenant on genocide. And so, we know that the Chinese regime is restricting the fertility of Uyghur women, is removing Uyghur children to Han Chinese environments, has got a program of concentration camps to deny the Uyghurs their ability to practice their religion and try and get them to comply with Mandarin Chinese as opposed to their own language. It's clear it's genocide. So the question really is, why is it that the government simply will not acknowledge this fact and respond appropriately at a time of crisis? I've heard from sources in China that it's a 40-year program to try and eliminate the Uyghur threat to China because the Uyghurs would prefer to have their own country run by themselves as opposed to being managed by the Chinese Communist Party, whose capital is many thousands of miles away. Kashgar is actually closer to Budapest than to Beijing as the crow flies. So, one can understand their concerns. So I don't know why our government simply will do nothing about these egregious Chinese violations of the international rules-based order in Xinjiang, in Hong Kong, domestically, internationally, in terms of their, the South China Sea and incursions on the sovereign territory of other nations in international waters. Why is it that our government only virtue signals and, says sympathetic things to appease the Canadian people, but doesn't actually take action to make the Chinese government accountable for what they're doing, including in the case of Michael Kovrig and Michael's favor, now heading up to 800 days.
800 days today. Yeah. Okay, Charles Burton, thank you again, sir. Always good to hear from you.
With you,
thank
Rob.
you again. Senior Fellow, Macdonald Laurier Institute. Back right after the news. Rob Snow Show, City News.
On 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, February 17th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 17, in Smiths Falls, minus 15 degrees. And here's what's making news this hour. A new survey has found just 1 in 5 Canadians have good, quote, information hygiene. It means engaging with news, avoiding information echo chambers, and verifying information you do read or hear. The findings come from communications firm Edelman. It warns that eroding trust in scientists, CEOs, and journalists could harm the rollout of COVID-19 vaccine in our country. Annual inflation rate rose 1% in January from 1 year ago, the biggest increase that economists had predicted. StatsCan says rising gasoline prices did fuel the increase. Prices at the pumps up 6.1% from December, but still almost 3.5% lower in January this year than January last year. Ottawa Police warning owners of high-end vehicles be on the lookout for theft. In one night alone, 5 luxury vehicles stolen in the Bridlewood area of Canada. There have also been multi-vehicle theft nights in Crystal Beach and Orleans. Police say high-end vehicles like Highlanders and Tacomas are the ones targeted. And Buckingham Palace says the Queen's 99-year-old husband has been admitted to London Hospital as a precautionary measure. The palace says Prince Philip was taken to King Edward VII Hospital after feeling unwell. City News Time, 9:34. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Time to score your political fix. Geoff Turner is back, senior consultant, Bluesky Strategy Group. Good morning, Geoff.
Hey, Rob.
Jason Lietaer is the president of Enterprise Canada. Good morning, Jason. Welcome back.
Morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from both of you today. So I noticed that when I log on to some various news websites, I keep seeing ads that say, meet Erin O'Toole. Oh, that Google. Very, very smart, Google, knowing that I read a lot of political news. There are other ads that tout the O'Toole Conservatives as being, say, better for the economy than the Trudeau Liberals. It seems to be an attempt to, let's face it, introduce the leader of the official opposition ahead of a general election. Erin O'Toole, maybe still largely unknown to a lot of people. How does Erin O'Toole convince Canadians that he's the right person for the job right now? Jason Lietaer? Why don't you start?
Man, it's tough.
It's tough, right? Yeah.
I mean, I've said this on the show before, but it's government time, not opposition time. Nobody's paying attention to any opposition politicians, whether that's provincial politics or federal politics. So, but there are things he can do. So, first of all, people are spending a lot of time at home, a lot of time on the computer. So I do actually really like the digital ad strategy to just sort of say, hey, have you heard of this guy? Because the truth is, most people haven't. And the thing about Erin as well is he's a lot of steak, not a lot of sizzle, right? He's sort of the inverse or the reverse of Mr. Trudeau. And in this kind of an environment where, people are like, when is my vaccine coming and when can I get back to work full time? It's really hard to sort of introduce yourself. So I like the strategy of that. I think they've, when they do well, they're proposing improvements to a lot of the things the government is doing. I thought the Conservatives actually had some really good things last summer, just before, just as the Liberals were getting their feet on some of the business planning programs or business support programs and stuff like that. They've got to get back to and continue to improve sort of a lot of lives and get things that are noticed. But I got to tell you, there's zero media attention, there's zero interest. Right. And there's zero sort of engagement in politics right now. People just want the vaccine.
But you like the use of that particular platform, Jason, right?
Yeah, I think it's good for a lot of different reasons.
All right.
And number one, you can measure success. Number two, you don't need a lot of money to make a little bit of an impact. Okay. And number three, you can follow the people that engage with your content. So digital is probably the right move for them right now. All right. Listen, you're in the middle of an ocean adrift right now, and that's not just Erin O'Toole. That's Stephen Del Duca in Ontario. It's all the other opposition leaders who just can't get a word in edgewise.
Okay, Geoff, what do you think about this latest kind of campaign within a campaign for Mr. O'Toole? Meet Erin O'Toole. Geoff Turner.
I think it's interesting because he certainly introduced himself, of course, to the party membership. That's what you do in a leadership election. And since that's been in the past since August, the next job, of course, is to try to introduce yourself. And Jason's quite right about not only the moment we're in, but that wide sea of information that people are consuming. Makes that difficult. I think when you look at kind of the politics of what's happening and how they're going to approach this, and one of the biggest dangers that an opposition leader faces, no matter what their partisan stripe when they're in that office, is seeming to be auditioning for the job of opposition leader as opposed to auditioning for the job of government. And it's a delicate balance because opposition leaders have to oppose. It's the way our systems work. They are supposed to resist the government's agenda. But also Canadians and in general the public want to see what they would do differently and how they would do differently. So I appreciate Jason's comments about that work in the summer and how that is an important way for the party to show kind of both sides of that coin. And I think that's probably the greatest challenge for him. I mean, the second thing I would say is that the public is very attuned in Canada to watching leaders who are saying different things to different audiences. And traditionally, we're very accustomed to looking at that in the French-English divide. A leader will say one thing in French so that they can appeal to Quebec and another thing in English so they can appeal outside of Quebec. I think we're starting to see that in other avenues, especially now that social media and these sort of bubble media ecosystems that people are finding themselves trapped in, they can say different things to different audiences using those new tools. And so I think in Mr. O'Toole's case, having come out of his successful leadership election, courting the sort of second ballot support of social conservatives, leading his True Blue campaign, being a rock-ribbed conservative, and now pivoting to being the centrist. There's talk about getting on board with carbon taxes. There's talk about an open, inclusive party. It's a little bit at odds with that. And so I think what they have to be careful about is Canadians are starting to see the the daylight between those two positions. And I think we'll be tolerant of them picking a side, but they won't be tolerant of them trying to play both sides.
Okay. What do you think of the use of social media, as say opposed to whatever, ads during a hockey game or something like that, Geoff? What do you think about that?
Yeah, Jason nailed it exactly. I mean, in terms of your affordability, your targetability, and the bang for your buck, it's absolutely where all political parties are investing significant resources, if not in campaign budgets. More money is spent on digital now than was spent on probably airplanes in the past. It's actually really a big part of modern campaigning because it reaches those audiences. But I think, the other thing that the public is starting to become more aware of, especially as we've watched the turmoil in the U.S. that seems in a large way stoked by that, I think how that tool is used will be as important as whether that tool is used.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Geoff, but I mean, just picking up on where this conversation is going and looking ahead to what could be, say, an April-May election or a May-June election, and the potential for whatever, a third wave or whatever, it's not going to be a two-plane campaign, right? There's not going to be whistle stops along the way, and I doubt there will be multiple campaign events with the carefully orchestrated backdrop of voters and everything else. None of that. A lot of that is not going to be happening. So it's going to make that social media presence and that social media message, that pitch, all the more important, right?
Absolutely. And I think lots of folks have been learning in this who have been campaigning, British Columbia, Newfoundland, Labrador, New Brunswick, et cetera, and some by-elections to boot. So lots of lessons being learned.
Yeah. Jason?
It's almost like there isn't a campaign in those places. I was out in BC for a little bit, sort of watching closely, and I will say it's almost like there isn't a campaign. That's the thing, is the issues are so serious right now, in terms of the pandemic,
right?
And in terms of businesses failing and people worried about their parents and their families and when can I get a vaccine, and the issues are so serious that sort of a couple of guys squabbling on the TV doesn't really interest you that much.
Yeah,
and so I will say that, I think it's one of the huge advantages for the Liberals, and it's one of the reasons why opposition leaders generally are having a hard time. Most people have made a decision on Mr. Trudeau. There's a bunch that don't like him at all. There's a bunch that can live with him and wouldn't mind somebody else coming along that is pretty good. And that's the group that Mr. O'Toole needs to speak to, is that group that's like, is there anybody that can take over for this guy who I'm comfortable with taking over from this guy? That's 10 or 20 people out of 100 in Canada. But so far, that no Conservative in the last couple of elections has proven to be worthy of that trust in their judgment. And so that's his goal. But man, it's tough to punch through because it's wartime. Like I said this before. And it's hard to punch through.
Well, let's kind of skip ahead on our list of topics here, because then this is interesting. Because the last three polls have the NDP at, say, between 18-22% popular support. I would say the polls since January. Does a stronger NDP, does that help or does that actually hurt the Conservatives, Jason, in your opinion?
Depends where. Depends where.
So, okay.
Strong NDP helps the Conservatives in Ontario, generally.
Okay.
Strong NDP helps the Conservatives in eastern provinces, like in places like Halifax and in places like St. John's.
Right.
It hurts the Conservatives in British Columbia. If Mr. Singh does well, or in downtown Regina, it has the possibility, or in downtown Edmonton, for example. So there's a couple of places, like on balance, the NDP being at 20% is a big boon for the Conservatives. It's really good. We actually faced this in 2011 in the final days of the election campaign, where Jack Layton was actually in second place. Michael Ignatieff was in third place. Other than BC, that was great news for the Conservatives for the most part, just to generalize. So the truth is, it matters. It matters a lot. If Mr. Singh is at 20 or 22 or God forbid, 25%, it's almost impossible for Mr. Trudeau to win a majority. So they have to drive that number down, and it's one of the reasons why you'll see the Liberals tacking left to try to attack and sort of eat Mr. Singh's lunch.
Okay. Geoff, do you view it like that? largely, or are you points of disagreement there?
It's a double-edged sword for sure, and it can work exactly the way that Jason has identified in select ridings and swing ridings, and it's a matter of how much you're peeling off the ultimate victor in a competitive race to the point where their second place might be more competitive than them, for sure. I think the other thing that's rising the last few years as populism, and not to put too much of a negative spin on it, but the sort of popular appeal has become much more mainline in our politics, and the NDP are well positioned to capitalize on that as well. I remember in the 2014 Ontario campaign, it was quite a surprise to everybody when Andrew Horwath and the NDP, half their signs were blue. And half their signs were blue because they were targeting a group of voters who were less ideological and more just frustrated. And I think that's what the NDP are trying to do here as well.
True blue, Andrew Horwath.
True blue, Andrew Horwath.
It was a lighter blue, just to be fair. But
look. I mean, I remember the last provincial election campaign. It was really interesting because John Fraser, for the Ottawa South candidate, his signs were yellow.
It's a traditional
and he was and he was Dalton McGuinty's right-hand really constituency guy for that election. Yeah. Vote for the yellow candidate of the Ontario Liberal Party. Okay, look, we'll stop right here. When we come back, Trudeau and China. Does Trudeau have a China problem? We know that, when it comes to public opinion, Canadians have soured on the Chinese government. But at the same time, do foreign affairs issues really decide a Canadian election? We'll ask our panelists about that. And the Liberal election checklist, okay? We've given you some forgiveness on the CERB. We made a big announcement on public transit. Yesterday, kind of a nothing burger on gun control. They are kind of, in my opinion, they're going through their pre-election checklist. What else could Justin Trudeau announce before triggering that election? We'll be right back. Your Political Fix. Rob Snow Show, City News.
The Snowsuit Fund is in almost its 40th year. We've been helping low-income families keep children warm during our cold winters in Ottawa. Last season, we distributed over 16,000 snowsuits to families in our Ottawa area. Well, it originally started with just a handful of snowsuits being handed out, and it has now grown to 16,000 each year. All families must qualify for a snowsuit. We have a eligibility criteria that we follow, and it's based on low income. We follow the Stats Canada guidelines. If families are receiving assistance, they receive a snowsuit from us if they need one. We are no government funding. We are supported by the community. All our donations come from generous supporters in the community. People can donate directly to the Snowsuit Fund. $50 buys a brand new snowsuit for a child in need. Online, you can do through Canada Helps or directly through the Snowsuit Fund. Well, the Snowsuit Fund has really had to change its operation this season with the physical distancing. Normally, we have many families coming in at the same time. We are now by appointment only. We don't know if our numbers will increase, but we expect that they will go up this season. Unfortunately, this season we are not able to have the volunteers due to the spacing. Last season we had over 700 volunteers, but this year we have only allowing 8 volunteers, and they have to be continual volunteers on a regular basis. So we're not changing and introducing new people in the depot.
It's just a great charity to get involved in, and it's really when you come here and see what happens at the depot that it really starts to hook you when you see people walk in. I mean, it's changed a lot this year in terms of how the depot is working, but I was here in the days when families would show up and there could be anywhere from a mother and a single child to 12 family members, getting snowsuits and running back to the warehouse and getting different colors and different sizes. And the one constant that has always stuck with me is when you take a snowsuit out and you see a child's face. I mean, if you want to see some bright eyes and some wide grins, it's amazing. When they leave here, they're just incredibly happy.
Well, I think this year with COVID, I think it's very important that children have the opportunity to play outside and have a warm snowsuit. And thanks to the generous community, we are fortunate to provide these snowsuits to them. And I hope that once again we can count on their support.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Back with your political fix from Bluesky Strategy. Senior consultant Geoff Turner is with us, and the president of Enterprise Canada, Jason Lietaer. Trudeau in China, it has been 800 days as of today in prison for the two Michaels. Calls growing for Canada to boycott the Beijing Olympics or to have those games moved to another location. Vaccine agreement with CanSino. Research agreement with Huawei. Trudeau's comments this week about genocide of the Uyghurs. The situation with Hong Kong, another one. Does the Trudeau government have a China problem, and could it cost Liberals votes in an election? Jason, what do you think?
Well, the answer to the first question is simple. It's yes. They made a bunch of it themselves. A bunch of it they have nothing to do with. So remember when they came into office, it seems like years and years ago, and I guess it is, or decades ago, the way it's changed. But when they first came into office, it was, China's our friend. We need to expand trade to China. It was that sort of Chrétien Power Corp direction.
Team Canada, right?
Yeah, absolutely. These guys are our friends, and everyone sort of looked at them and said, you're a little naive guys. And sure enough, they recalibrated pretty quickly and realized, within 2 or 3 years that wasn't going to work. I mean, the Chinese and Mr. Trudeau has gotten sort of a pass on this because Donald Trump was so egregious to Canadians and so noticeable to Canadians for the last couple of years that really China's been sort of in the background, I would say. And people, hated Trump so much, they didn't realize the biggest problem we have, and by far the most contentious and the most confrontational, is China. And so any Canadian prime minister's got a big problem here, by the way. If Mr. O'Toole won, he'd have a very similar problem to the one that Mr. Trudeau, and the whole world has a real problem because the Chinese and President Xi are very aggressive. Like they've decided that they're going to be very aggressive, and I don't blame them. They think they're taking over after the last 4 years of American sort of disaster. But these guys are bad guys. It's a murderous regime. They've got our people. They've kidnapped our people, and I think our government's starting to get a backbone because they realize that a bully only responds to, sort of shows a strength, not a force.
Okay.
So, but it's a very difficult problem. I don't want to pretend that the Liberals have an easy problem to solve here.
Right. Okay. Geoff, what do you think, Geoff?
Certainly a sticky problem, and Jason's correct that it's both a domestic one, but it's also a global issue. And also thinking back to that sort of 2016 era, as the Trudeau government was sort of coming into this, you had Donald Trump come in and kick out the jams on NAFTA and say a lot of very scary things for the Canadian economy there. So the Canadian government had to make a pivot to try to shore up its second and third largest trading relationships, and that was China. And then I think after a couple of years of that, to Jason's point, once looking a little bit more closely at it and experiencing the things that happened subsequently, then naturally sort of soured. And then, of course, the two Michaels are a travesty that we all cannot wait to see resolved. I think it's important, as we've all said, there's a global problem. The arbitrary detention of foreign nationals is an Australian problem. It's an American problem. It's a United Kingdom problem. It's a Japanese problem. It is happening with those countries. And so I think two things. One, Canada has gone just 2 days ago with a declaration involving 56 countries, including most of our peers like that, speaking out on this issue and trying to raise pressure, because Canada does not in and of itself have the diplomatic clout to change things in China. It needs to work with its allies. It needs to build consensus. It needs to find those multilateral ways of applying friction. Because to do it ourselves, I think it would make us all feel better if we went out and beat our chest really hard and said a lot of nasty things. But all we'd walk away with in real results is a bruised chest and maybe a few more votes. And so I think everything the Canadian government does now, I believe, is going through that diplomatic problem-solving lens and trying to make sure that the relationship stays on a path to some kind of peaceable resolution as opposed to a further escalation, which will serve no one.
Is it an election issue? Does it play in the election? Is it a factor in the election, Geoff?
It is, because it's been made an issue very pointedly by mainstream parties and especially the Conservatives. It is not it's not unexpected, because we saw the same thing from the Republican Party in the U.S. And not to paint a broad brush there, but just to say that conservative movements have been focusing on China. It's a familiar place to be critical of. You have communism, you have Marxism that plays very well with certain audiences and conservative vote pools. So I think it's a good way of energizing a certain segment of voters, but I don't think it's a way of capturing new voters for other parties.
Growing the movement, in other words. Okay, Jason, what do you think?
I want it to be, because I think it's a big issue. I mean, we're talking about, a very similar sort of dynamic to parts of the Cold War back in the day. We're talking about, good guys and bad guys. I'm not talking about the
freedom and tyranny, Jason.
I'm talking about the murderous regime that's in place over there, and they're a very aggressive stance. I mean, this is something that people are going to have to deal with, and Mr. Biden's going to have to deal with. Jeff's bang on in terms of the multilateralism. You can't do this alone. I will say though, I just don't know what Mr. Trudeau was thinking, throwing all his vaccine cards or poker chips in the middle with the CanSino partnership, and then China within days sort of saying, actually, we're not going to send you any vaccine. And whether it's a good vaccine or a bad vaccine, I can't believe that was Canada's strategy as recently as last summer. Given all that we've been through on this stuff, just this week there was a report that says that Canadian universities are partnering with Huawei on telecom technology. Why not?
I mean, sure.
When do we have to? How much do we have to learn? How many times do you have to be punched in the face? How many times do you have to to sort of? And I think this will be something that Mr. O'Toole, because I know he believes strongly about it. I've spoken with him about it. Is trying now. Whether or not it will resonate with voters, that's a completely other thing, right? This esoteric how should we deal with China is not as big an issue as when am I going to get a vaccine?
Exactly.
He's going to get a vaccine, but he's going to try and make it an issue for sure.
Okay, so let's go through this pre-election checklist. CERB, tax relief, self-employed CERB, you don't have to pay us back at all. If there was some confusion, sorry. And if you've started to pay us back, just call us. We'll give you whatever money you paid back. We'll give that to you back in a refund. Tax relief for a year if you owe us any taxes on any pandemic relief programs. Check that off, okay? We don't want CRA calling and hounding people during an election. Public transit funding that will start, when was it? 2025, 2026, something like that. Whatever, biggest ever.
Right around the corner. Right around the corner.
Biggest one ever, though. Check. Now gun control. So we're 3 deep here. What else could be on the way, do you think, in terms of announcements on the pre-election checklist before we trigger the actual election? Jeff Turner.
I'll give you my top answer, which is childcare. There will be some stuff in there about childcare. We saw plenty of polling coming out of the government. Their own pre-budget submissions and surveys featured childcare predominantly as an option you could select. All of those things indicate that in some fashion it'll be in there, and that's consistent with what they've been saying to date. I think you'll probably see that in the budget. My second point, Rob, is in having worked in an Ontario Minister of Finance's office in budget prep, you do these sort of early rollouts of a few items that you want to make sure get the attention they deserve, but that might otherwise get lost on budget day because budgets are such large and sprawling, documents. So expect to see maybe 1 or 2 more of these things. They will be in the budget in some fashion, but they're trying to highlight them early so that people remember them when the big bang of the budget happens and is replaced by things like childcare or other pandemic measures or the big things that we're going to be paying attention to.
Jason?
Well, Jeff's giving you such a serious answer. I feel bad giving you such a BS answer. He's taking it so seriously.
Okay.
So the Liberals, they gun control was so important. It was so urgent, this gun and gang problem that we've got in Toronto that is killing people, that they waited 2 years to bring in a set of policies that weren't going to deal with the biggest problems we've got, which are gang violence and gun smuggling from the United States. It's the exact kind of metaphor for what the Liberals are going to do. I think Jeff's bang on childcare. They're going to bring in a childcare proposal. Now, the Liberals have been bringing in childcare proposals since I'm 45.
With money to flow in 2025, 2020.
Yeah, that's about 45 years that I've heard, we're going to have pharmacare and childcare and all the things that you want. There's going to be a serious health proposal probably in the long-term care, sort of dealing with elderly people space, I think, and sort of, it's sad to say, but there will be some sort of spurious allegation that Mr. O'Toole is going to take away a woman's right to an abortion. So there will be some sort of spurious accusation that's going to happen. You can set your clock by it. The Liberals, only have one campaign sort of, approach here, and then you can set your clock by it. You know it's going to happen. The media will fall for it, and there will be 5 days of campaigning on whether or not Mr. O'Toole, who is, by the way, very pro-choice, is going to do this. It's been the same campaign since I was, a young man.
Okay. All right. Good to hear from both of you this week. Thank you so much for the political fix.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.
Jason Lietaer and Geoff Turner. Yeah. The news is coming up, and then it's a Talkback Hour. Your calls at 750-1310 on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, February 17th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 17 degrees. In Smiths Falls, minus 15. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Many Canadians have taken to social media complaining they've been locked out of their account with CRA. The department is not releasing many details about why this is happening, but City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney has that story.
The complaints are piling up with people saying they can't access their accounts and have spent hours on hold with the Canada Revenue Agency trying to get answers. In a statement to me, a CRA spokesperson says taxpayers with my account may receive a notification that their email address has been removed, and this is a proactive security precaution from investigative work. It goes on to say that there's been no cybersecurity breach of CRA systems, and those affected will get a letter telling them how to unlock their accounts. However, the department has not answered many of my follow-up questions seeking clarity on what this investigative work is. Was there any attempted breach of security, and just how many people are impacted? Last summer, the CRA had to temporarily shut down its online services due to a credential stuffing attack that affected tens of thousands of users. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 10:03. Now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Oh, we've got some cold wind chill to deal with this morning, but it won't be too bad for the afternoon. The high -7, and we'll have lots of sunshine for most areas today. Some clouds build for Smiths Falls for the afternoon. Tonight, partly cloudy, -18. It'll feel like -21 overnight. And tomorrow, a chance of flurries. Snow, though, overnight Thursday into Friday. Tomorrow's high, -4. For today, the high, -7.
And right now, -17 degrees in Ottawa, -15 in Smiths Falls. Ottawa police are warning owners of high-end vehicles be on the lookout for theft. In one night, 5 luxury vehicles were stolen in the Bridlewood area of Canada. There have also been multi-vehicle thefts in Crystal Beach and Orleans. Police say the high-end vehicles like Highlanders and Tacomas are often targeted and they have no suspect description. But how many have been stolen? Well, 200 last year and 35 already this year. Police are asking owners of high-end vehicles to report anything suspicious, like maybe some damage around the door handle you didn't notice before. A 27-year-old Ottawa man facing several charges after a search warrant was executed at a home in Gloucester. It followed a firearm discharge incident over the weekend in which a neighboring house was damaged. Police investigated the incident at a home on Gatestone Private on Sunday evening. The firearm projectile did damage another house in that block. Now, a loaded weapon, a handgun, a large amount of cash, and cell phones were seized during the execution of a warrant. The accused is scheduled for a show cause hearing today. A lawyer representing Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend says she is withering away in jail.
Ghislaine Maxwell is withering to a shell of her former self, defense attorney said, as she sits in the federal lockup in Brooklyn while charged with enabling Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sex trafficking of minors. Maxwell has been trying to relax the conditions of her confinement, which the defense said have had a detrimental impact on her health and are keeping her from helping her lawyers prepare for trial. Prosecutors have said repeated searches and constant checks are necessary for Maxwell's safety, but the defense believes they're the byproduct of negligence that resulted in Epstein's death by suicide. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
City News Time, 10:05. At least we're used to poor weather in winter, but for places that are not, this has been a rude awakening. Greece had to call in the armed forces to help repair widespread damage. Heavy snowfall in and around Athens. Blizzards, in fact, continue to cause havoc in neighboring Turkey, and snow even reaching as far as Libya. More than 800 fallen trees in Greater Athens struck power lines, leaving parts of the Greek capital without power and water. The cold front made its way across the eastern Mediterranean Sea, snow reaching an area in northeastern Libya for the first time in 15 years. And a snowstorm this morning caused road closures in northern Syria. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Oh, I don't like hearing the news. 10 o'clock news. The My Account, CRA, My Account. Any problems to report, ladies and gentlemen, with the Canada Revenue Agency My Account? It's tax season, right? I just received my T4 not that long ago. Going to start taking a stab at the taxes. Do I need to worry about the My Account thing? Oh, what a time for that to go down. I don't want to be one of those people who has to spend hours in line on the telephone with Service Canada. Have you ever had to do that, David? No.
No, my account takes care of that for me.
Yeah, as long as your My Account is working. But what if you go and because one of the complaints, according to Cormac, is My Account does not exist anymore, right? So that's problematic. I have heard horror stories. People on hold. The current wait time is 4 days, right? And they wait on hold for 3 days, and then the phone just hangs up on them. It just hangs up.
I read someone just now who said they called and the queues were full and all the representatives were busy, so they
don't even bother.
You can't even get in the line.
You can't even get in line.
Can't even get in the line.
Yeah. So I know people who have had to deal with Service Canada, and generally speaking, once you actually get a live person on the telephone, it's all well and good, I guess. But the wait itself is not a pleasant experience. 750-1310. It's great to be back with you. I've been away for a few days. Thanks to Sam LaPrade for filling in. But I would really love to hear from some of our callers at 750-1310. 750-1310. 613-750-1310. Kind of two big things in the mix for me right now. One of them is Trudeau in China. 800 days, it says in the Globe and Mail, this copy of the Globe and Mail, which is today's copy, February 17th, Wednesday. Yeah, it's today. 800 days that Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor have been held in jail in China. 800 days today. Now there are calls for Canada to boycott the Beijing Games or to have the Beijing Olympics moved to some other location. We had the Trudeau government do this vaccine agreement with CanSino back in March. We know now, based on media reports, that that deal was basically dead on arrival. 3 days later, they knew that was going nowhere. Now, recent reports in the Globe and Mail about the research agreement with Huawei and Canadian universities. Trudeau's ridiculous comments dancing all around the word genocide when it comes to the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghurs, the Muslim ethnic minority in a part of China. We have the absolute crushing of democracy in Hong Kong. So I would put it to you this morning, maybe we could get back into this again. The Trudeau government's policies with the Chinese government, would it cost him your vote in an election? Do you think it will hurt him at the polls? Do you think it will hurt him at the polls? Will the Trudeau government's policies with the Chinese government, when it comes to our relationship with that Chinese government, do you think it will cost him politically? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. And on the pandemic, we have the economy and we have the lockdowns. We have the economy and the lockdowns, stay-at-home orders, curfews, the reopening. Is it wise, in your opinions, at 750-1310, is it wise to be reopening the economy right now? Given the pace of vaccinations, for example, given the new variants that are found with increasing frequency, do you agree with the decision by Doug Ford's government to reopen parts of Ontario's economy, even just a tiny little bit? I'd love to I know it's not the first time. It probably won't be the last time that we get into that issue. Right or wrong decision to reopen the economy? Pretty basic question for the Talkback Hour this morning on this Wednesday. Right decision, wrong decision to do this latest version of the grand reopening of Ontario's economy. I'd like to know where you stand on that. At 750-1310, 750-1310, it is the Talkback Hour, and it's been a while since I've had a chance to hear from many of you. I've been away for a few days, but that's it. No time off until the summertime now. Judy.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, Judy.
Good morning. Rob, is it possible that if Huawei's in there long enough that they can find out a way, if they ever get mad at us and we go to war with them, to shut down our electricity and we freeze in the dark?
Oh, I would have no idea. I'd hate to think so. But
well, they're going to be the ones checking our computers constantly.
Well, I don't know, but it is perplexing, is it not? Do you not find it perplexing? All of these agreements that were so collaborative with that particular company and that particular country.
It's downright scary.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
But let me ask you, Judy, do you get the sense that it's even hurting him politically?
I don't know what happened to the brains of our young people.
Okay.
Because he's, like they say, he's the sly fox. Nothing can hurt him.
He's the sly fox and nothing can hurt him. So, okay, it doesn't sound like you think it's going to hurt him politically.
He's all right. He's got his bunker to go to if anything with his family.
Oh, okay.
I hope he has a lot of
So we have a Defen bunker, and you think there's what, a Trudeau bunker?
Oh, definitely.
A Justin bunker?
That's why he's so brave.
A Sophie bunker.
Put us in a bad spot. He'll be all right with his family.
Okay, thank you.
I think, one more thing.
Yes, okay.
You're probably going to be angry. I think he inherited bipolar. I'm sorry to say that.
We don't know anything about that. Okay. All right. Let's try not to, diagnose people's mental health on the radio. Let's just try to avoid that. Can we make it an agreement? Let's try and avoid that. 750-1310, Talkback Hour. 750-1310. We don't question the competence, but, we don't have to go into places we don't need to go to. Chesterville, Mike.
Oh, my God, we're going to spend the rest of the show talking about my mental health.
Morning, Mike.
I'm glad to see that the numbers are coming down provincially.
Yeah. The COVID-19 case numbers, you mean? Yeah.
Of course.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
And, if you want to say it's great that we did it and closed down and locked everything down and stopped people from going to work and shopping. Well, from what I understand, out west, they didn't lock down. Their numbers are down. If you look around the world, those that did and did not lock down seem to be having about the same numbers.
That case is being made now, yeah.
That case.
When they compare, for example, California, which had tight lockdowns, versus Florida, which was pretty much wide open, for example, they're pretty much meeting in the middle, aren't they, Mike?
At the end of the day, this brings me back to the thoughts of Y2K 20 years ago, where we spent $3 trillion fixing. The big one for me was I was at Canadian Tire and I saw a toaster can opener that were Y2K compliant.
Oh, well, that's good. Y2K compliant. Yeah, that's great.
I'm sitting there listening to everyone say how great it was that we fixed all of these major catastrophes before Y2K.
Imagine the burnt toast, Mike, if it wasn't Y2K compliant, that toaster.
You go to third world countries that did nothing.
Yeah.
And, well, the same thing happened to them, which was nothing at all.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not trying to downplay this. It's a serious issue.
Yeah.
But, Jesus, man, why are we going to these extraordinary measures? We've got a vaccine that should be in our hands, if not soon, relatively soon.
Yeah.
Let's just all be careful.
Okay.
And get on with our lives.
Okay, so you think it's a good idea to be reopening the economy right now, which is
I don't
the
think
question.
It should have.
You don't even think it should have been closed by as much as it was?
I don't mind washing my hands when I go in. I don't mind wearing a mask.
Yeah.
But let's take a hammer to kill that fly.
Okay.
And work.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mike in Chesterville. Okay. Yep. Okay. There you go. That's one man's opinion. It's Mike in Chesterville's opinion. I'd love to hear yours. I'm Rob in Ottawa. Rob Snow of The Rob Snow Show on City News.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time. So he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole thing. So we're very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to modify and shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help. produce that when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The new numbers are in Ontario cases for today. 847. Province-wide, 34,000 tests, 257 in Toronto, 170 in Peel, 131 in York Region. And as of 8 p.m. yesterday, just shy of 500,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine have been administered in Ontario. 489,484 doses. But 847 cases. I do remember the days when that is a number that would have knocked your socks off because it was so high. But remember when we entered into the lockdown, the day of the stay-at-home order, the day that they came into effect, there were more than 3,000 cases in Ontario, 3,300 and something, if memory serves. So here we are. It's reopening week for the economy, and it's less than 850. So is it the right thing to do, to be reopening the economy? Look, I know it's not the first time we've had this discussion. Opinion usually all over the place because a lot of people have a lot of opinions. And that's no surprise, given we're talking about lives and livelihoods. There are some who think things should remain closed tight as a drum. And there are others, like Mike, for example, our previous caller, who think things really should never have been closed down in the first place. And, the balance is somewhere in the middle. It's a big story this week. Not the only story. The peculiar decisions made by the Trudeau government on China is certainly another one. But on the reopening, Armand. Good morning, Armand.
Good morning. I'm all for it, like your last caller. I agree 100%. My personal take is every time you look at the news somewhere, you get some doctor that wants a couple of minutes of fame, and they're bringing it down. Oh, all this, and that. I don't see any doctors, really, a lot of them coming out and saying it's positive. You got to open with care. Just be careful. Continue on your life, because this might be here forever. Well, I'm not saying forever, but I mean for years to come. So what are we going to go? An emotional roller coaster, up and down, up and down, up and down? So we have to put basically the stop to it and say, hey, look, let's open up and let's do things right and keep on rolling.
Thank you, Armand. Thank you. Okay. Let's open up. Let's do it right. And let's get on with it. Roger. Good morning, Roger.
Bob, I got two things I want to talk about. We'll talk about opening of Ontario first, and then Mr. Trudeau's love with China, if that's okay?
Sure, yeah.
Well, as far as Ontario opening up, I think it's time, and I think it's got to stay that way. I'm not going to say I disagree with it closing over time, but there's been so much hardship, and we are not going to be able to recover if we continue on this path. The other callers are bang on. This emotional roller coaster is getting to be a bit much. I'll wear a mask for the next 30 years if I'm still alive, Rob, if that's what it takes to keep these small businesses their families and all the money that they invested, their mortgages and everything to these small businesses, and a lot of them are devastated, are never coming back. And we just can't continue doing this to people, you know?
Okay.
And we know what happened. We know why this has all happened, because our government, the Trudeau government, let us down big time, so I won't even go into that. But when it comes to the China policy, you know, you were talking to those political folks there on that panel this morning.
Yes.
Wondering, what is it about China that Trudeau so fixated on? Well, you know, his father's history with China, when he went to China when he was a kid, he likes that type of government. And if anybody can tell me, with the honest opinion, that what we have here in this country is a democracy, I'll give you, and you can tell me right from your heart, I'll give you $1,000. This guy likes the one-party system, Rob. I mean, this thing with Huawei, when is it going to end? You know, almost every country in the world is saying that we had enough of this, and those two Michaels that are still sitting there, he doesn't give a rat's hoot about them, you know. And then all those the Weebas that are being genocided, because there's a guy that would go to a gay pride parade, which is fine, you know, that's right. And then at the same time hand money to some despot dictator in some African nation so he can imprison those same people. He's using people as pawns, and he's continuing to do it.
Okay.
This is not a democracy, Rob.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Thank you. Kind of coloring outside the lines there, but let's, I understand what your sentiment there. Okay, let's move along. Perry in Ottawa. Perry.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, Perry.
You know, back in the day, as they say, on another radio station, you would get a lot of callers, and so would Mr. Green, from people saying, this is while the Conservatives were still in government. And people would say, you know, if the Liberals ever get into power again, there's going to be a major headache with China because of all the former Liberal ministers and insiders and their business dealings in China.
Yeah.
A lot of that was poo-poo.
A lot of that is well documented now, I believe.
Well documented. And now that everything that people were warning about has come to pass now. So you have to wonder, Rob, what is going on behind closed doors with China?
Well, I mean, some of the decision making. Why would we waste 3 months on a vaccine agreement with this company called CanSino? Why would you even want to enter into a partnership? But with any country in the world, you would do it with that country.
And why is he still waffling on Huawei?
On Huawei, they haven't even made a decision when it comes to 5G. They've left it up to the telecom companies to make the decision for them. So the big telecom companies have said no. We'll go with Huawei competitor technology, even though the Huawei gear is cheaper. That's why some telecom companies, not the one I work for, but some of our competitors decided to go with Huawei because their gear is made in China. It's cheaper, okay?
But then civilized countries are letting Huawei in.
And then, you have these comments about genocide. Every expert in genocide and human rights, international human rights, says, yeah, what's happening to the Uyghurs in China, it's a genocide, and yet it's all you can do to get the prime minister to admit as much. What's going on?
Exactly. What's going on, Rob?
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Perry. Yeah. We have a minute. I'll tell you what. We'll bring people on after the news. It's not fair to bring somebody on just for a minute. And if somebody's going to call and they're going to vent, I have to give them more than a minute, just in the interest of justice, social justice. The pandemic, the economy, lockdown, stay-at-home orders, the reopening of the economy. Is it wise to be reopening the economy right now? Do you agree with the decision by Doug Ford's government to reopen parts of the Ontario economy, even a teeny tiny little bit, as they have done here in the city of Ottawa, where there were 53 cases of COVID-19 reported in the last 24 hours. 800 days now in prison for the two Michaels, in a Chinese prison for the two Michaels, calls to boycott the Beijing Olympics or have them moved to another city. Meantime, we have a Trudeau government that enters into vaccine agreements with Chinese companies, allows Huawei to do research agreements with Canadian universities, can't get a straight word from the Prime Minister when it comes to the genocide of the Uyghur Muslims, the crushing of democracy in Hong Kong. What is happening with this government and its relationship with the Chinese government. And if you have any problems with the Canada Revenue Agency, my account to report, a number of people are reporting them. You can report them here on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, February 17th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 15 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's minus 13. Here's what's making news this hour. Some have taken to social media complaining they've been locked out of their CRA accounts. The department says taxpayers with a My account may receive a notification their email address has been removed, and it's a proactive security precaution. The inflation rate rose from 0.7% in December to 1% even last month. StatsCan reporting gas prices rose 6.1%, and the sale of new passenger vehicles also was a driving factor behind the increase. Latest numbers from the province indicate the new number of COVID-19 cases in Ottawa is 53 today. In the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, there are an additional 3 cases. In Renfrew, once again, no new cases of COVID-19. And in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, there are 3 new cases. Prince Philip has been admitted to a London hospital, is expected to remain there for a few days for observation and rest. Buckingham Palace says the Queen's 99-year-old husband was admitted to King Edward VII Hospital last night as a precautionary measure because he was not feeling well. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Well, now I'm worried because I want to get I'm going to get home and I'm going to look up the CRA Rob Snow My account. I hope that's working okay. I don't want to spend 3 days on the phone with Service Canada. Trudeau, China. Do you think any of this is costing the Trudeau government politically? 800 days in prison for the 2 Michaels. Calls for Canada to boycott the Beijing Olympics. Meantime, you have a government that does vaccine agreements with Chinese companies. You also have research agreements with Huawei, and Trudeau's comments about genocide of the Uyghurs. Just hold on a second. I have something running in this studio that's making a lot of noise. Hold on. That's my fault. I pressed a button I wouldn't normally press.
I've told you not to.
I was like, oh, I wonder what that does. Oh, yes, that's what I want to listen to.
Never goes.
Sorry about that, David. Are any of these perplexing decisions costing Trudeau politically? It doesn't seem so. Why is that the case? And on the pandemic, the economy, lockdowns, stay-at-home orders, it is reopening week for Ontario, and I want to know, do you agree with this decision by the Ontario government to begin reopening the economy? So why don't we start there? Second half of the talkback hour right now. Glenn is in Nepean. Good morning, Glenn.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, Glenn. How are you?
Good.
Good. Glad to hear it. What do you think about this idea of reopening the economy? Do you think that's the right thing to do?
Oh, I think it's a smart move for the government if they want the Amazon warehouse-to-door shipping to go through and for small business to go down. You're talking about a new variant that's about to explode, and it explodes in the extreme cold, which we are now in, and no vaccines available. That sounds like a recipe for disaster to me. That sounds like a lot of people may die in the next 2 months before the actual warm weather comes.
Okay.
That's not the issue I really wanted to talk about.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about motive.
Motive? What do you mean, motive?
Motive. Natural resources. Canada is full of natural resources.
Yeah.
It's been a target for hundreds of years, well, 60 years at least. We've been giving our natural resources to the states. They've been making them into finished goods and selling them back to them.
Well, we haven't been giving them away.
We've been selling them and buying finished goods back for more than we sold the raw material for. We could have been making finished goods and exporting out of this country for the last 50 years.
I suppose.
Why we have not is really questionable.
Well, find me a Canadian citizen who will work for the same hourly wage as a Chinese citizen, I suppose. Glenn, we could start right there, right?
Okay. Well, anyway, I believe that the Chinese are interested in our natural resources. For us to ship our natural resources by boats over to China to make them into products and then ship them back or around the world by boats to be able to sell them is a great expense. If we could pull them out of the ground here, make them into finished goods and ship them out as finished goods right out of Canada, that's kind of a big cost saving, much like the Amazon warehouse to door and sticking the price to the customer, which is probably why they're eliminating small business to promote this Amazon warehouse. The other topic I'd like to bring up is the two Michaels.
Okay.
Why have we not arrested some spies here in Canada? There are major evidence that we have spies here. And we're keeping 2 of our Canadians in jail that aren't spies. When we have spies in Canada, why are we not arresting 100 Chinese?
Okay, well, 100. I don't know. I understand what you're saying. Why, tit for tat, whatever the case might be.
Well, play hardball.
Yeah, okay, play hardball. Yeah, sure. Grow a spine, right? Have a backbone. If the world's leading experts, sorry, Glenn. When the world's leading experts say, for example, what's happening in China is a cultural genocide, but then why don't you just say it's a cultural genocide? Why are you dancing around and tiptoeing all around it? So that's one issue that's in the mix. I understand your frustration, sir. I share it on a great many things. The question period is underway in the Ontario legislature right now.
To reopen Ontario.
They're talking about reopening the economy. Andrea Horvath leading the questioning for the New Democrats. This is the Premier.
The advice of the Chief Medical Officer, and we're going to continue doing this while we make a transition into the framework. And the Leader of the Opposition knows very well that at any given time, the local medical officer of health can put out a Section 22 and put a stop to any opening. And again, we're doing this very cautiously. We still have the vast majority of the population in Toronto and York and Peel determining if it's going to go for another couple of weeks based on the advice from their local medical officer of health, and we're going to listen to that. So I'm not too sure who the Leader of the Opposition's listening to, but I'm listening to the doctors, and I always will.
The supplementary.
Well, Speaker, it is disturbing to see the lengths to which this government's prepared to go in order to justify the rushed reopening in our province. Last week, we saw the Minister of Education use data that was raised by the modelling table to justify the government's reopening plan. And in fact, just yesterday, Dr. Fisman, who is responsible for that data, that modelling, told QP Briefing, and I quote, that his work was twisted and misinterpreted to justify bad policy choices. How can anyone believe that this government's plan is safe when the experts are saying that their data on which the government is apparently relying is being twisted and misinterpreted?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, the Chief Medical Officer of Health has provided guidance to the government to delay, not cancel March break. If it is the position of the member opposite that we should be following the science and the medical experts, how can she undermine confidence in the medical leader of this province who's trying to ensure every day we are able to recover and able to protect the public? I think that does a great disservice to our institutions. And honestly, I'm quite shocked that the leader of the opposition would undermine confidence in the leader who's provided guidance to this province to get us through the worst of this pandemic. Our priority, sir, our Speaker, is to ensure that every day we follow that guidance. It's why we've delayed it. And yes, the modelling did suggest that this new UK variant will become the dominant strain in and around the period of March break, which is why we deferred it based on that medical expertise. In fact, the chair of the Medical Officers of Health Council provided that guidance. The Public Health Measures Table unanimously recommended that. And this Premier will follow that advice every step of the way.
Okay, that was the Education Minister on the decision to delay March break. That was Mr. Lietaer. Let's listen to one more question here from
information I don't trust. It's the Premier who I have no confidence in whatsoever. Why? We have seen 3,700 seniors, 3,800 seniors lose their lives in long-term care to COVID-19 under this Premier's watch. We've seen 6,700 Ontarians lose their lives to COVID-19 because of this Premier's decisions. And what are those decisions? He is not listening to the experts. In November, he claimed that the experts were good with his framework, his new framework that he unveiled, only to find out almost the very next day that in fact they hadn't even seen the framework. That, Speaker, is very troubling. Now their experts are saying that the information that they are providing to the government is being twisted and it's being misinterpreted. When will the Premier actually start listening to the hospitals, to the doctors, to his own experts, and prevent this province from going into yet another third wave and lockdown?
Premier through you, Mr. Speaker, I've obviously listened to the Chief Medical Officer from day one. I've never wavered from that. I've listened to all the CEOs, and maybe if you talk to some of the CEOs of the hospitals, Leader of the Opposition, you might get some input. Rather than sitting there and constantly criticizing from day one, putting confusion with the public about paid sick days, rather than sending inaccurate information out to the public and hurting the public, why don't you come and join us to support the people of Ontario for once, rather than just sit there and criticize and criticize. You know, it's like listening to nails on a chalkboard, listening to you.
I think he's going to get
through the chair.
Yeah,
not directly across.
Not allowed to say that.
Next question, Leader of the Opposition.
All right.
Speaker, this Premier.
Oh boy, it's like listening to nails on a chalkboard. Listening to you, but really, is Doug Ford really saying to the Leader of the Opposition, "Why are you being so critical of me?" Okay, all right, okay. That's where we are in Ontario politics this morning. Welcome to it. Dave Maverly, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
I haven't heard you in a long time.
That's great. Yeah, I was off for a week, so it's good to be back.
Well, it's great to have you back, Rob.
Thank you. Maverly, is that David says you're from Maverly?
Just south or west of east of Sharbert Lake. God, I can't remember.
Okay, all right. East, west, south of Sharbert Lake. Somewhere around Sharbert Lake.
I'm only conservative with a bunch of lefties.
I see. Okay, all right. Okay.
You know, this guy. I mean, how can this guy lead a country when he can't get two people out of jail in China?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That bothers me. You know, like a lot of things. Like everything he does is a red herring. Like he's waiting for the next thing, eh? And while if you question about COVID, well, we got 2 guys in China. We're trying to get them out. And yesterday you had Bill Blair come out there like a buffoon and make a stupid statement. So I don't know.
There's a lot of I find in federal politics right now, it's like anything that can be done, anything that can be announced to take the shine off the problems with the vaccination rollout, Dave. They're going to do that.
Oh, certainly. That's exactly what he's doing.
With the gun control announcement yesterday, I don't know what's going on there. There doesn't seem to be a lot of meat on that bone to me. We're going to voluntarily ask people to let us buy their guns back from them voluntarily.
Yeah. Well, that's going to work, isn't it, Rob?
Okay. Right. And if cities want to ban handguns, I mean, there's a terrible handgun problem, no doubt, in Canada's biggest cities, but it's not because Dave in Maverley owns a handgun. Right?
No, if I own handguns,
they are stolen handguns used by criminal enterprises for the most part, Dave. Those are the problems. Those are the problematic firearms.
If I wanted to shoot a handgun or own a handgun, the hoops I'd have to go through.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, the money could be well better spent at the border, if nothing else.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyways, Bob, I don't want to take up any more.
No, thank you, Dave. Thank you for the call. Thank you. Good luck.
Listen to you, Rob. Thank you.
Well, it's a great pleasure to hear from you. I'll take your call anytime when you say kind things like that. Bill in the South End. Bill, Ottawa South.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, my thought on Trudeau in China is that there's no crime that the Chinese Communist Party can commit that would offend Mr. Trudeau. He's so supportive of that regime that he didn't even raise the question about Nortel with them.
No.
And Huawei was built on Nortel, on the destruction of Nortel. And that doesn't offend him either, and nothing offends him. That the Chinese, and when the Chinese decide to go against Taiwan, he's already indicated that he would abandon Taiwan to their fate.
Yeah, it's. Do you think it's having an effect politically, though, Bill?
Unfortunately, no. It doesn't seem to be. I think he's bribed the young people pretty well, and he tends to use taxpayer money to bribe that section of the population he thinks will vote for him. So that seems to be working for him.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for your call, sir. Very nice to hear from you this morning. Yeah, it's the final quarter of the Talk Back Hour. Coming up, Rob Snow Show on City News.
The location is unique. There's, as you can see, it's open, and we have large windows. You can sit down and you can look outside. And this scene is not many scenes like that in Ottawa anymore with the high buildings. And we have the train station to the west of us. We have the train yards. To the south, we have Saint Laurent Shopping Center, not far from here. And OC Transpo, not far from here. And the train, the light train, again, is not far from here. You can find breakfast. The breakfast, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was one of the best five restaurants in Ottawa, one of the five best breakfasts in Ottawa. 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the Citizen. And our club sandwich is voted by customers the best in town. And the pea soup, too, is voted the best in town. We sell, we make pizza, we make Italian food, Lebanese dishes. Many customers describe it as it has the prices of the 60s, very reasonable prices. And the food, many say the best in town, not me. Many customers say that. It was a shock. It was a shock And we went from doing well to barely doing very little. We relied heavily on the takeout, and the takeout was not that much. There was some. I hear from many customers that they are willing to come and sit inside. They're not afraid of the spread, as long as we wash our hands, sanitize everything, and wear your mask and keep the distancing. Most or all our customers are okay with that. So they are against the lockdown, They are supporting us a lot. And if it wasn't for the community loyalty, we wouldn't be here today. So I have to thank them for their support so far. It's been great.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Reopening week for the Ontario economy. Days of living under stay-at-home orders are over. Welcome to Orange Restrict. We live in the Orange Restrict world now. So, I mean, it's hardly a free-for-all, right? When it comes to getting back to normal. You have gray. That's like the worst. Gray, like the color-coded scheme is gray. That's full lockdown, gray. Then you have red. You would think red would be the worst. Like red alert, red alert, red alert. Red is a very action color. They call it an action color. But it's gray, actually, is full lockdown. Then you have red, which is stringent measures. Then it's where we are, which is orange restrict. And then you have yellow, which means protect, and then green, which is where you want to be. You want to be green. If you want to be anything, be green. You say it's not easy being green, but green is where you want to be now, green is, quote, the broadest allowance of activities. This is the language of the government, the broadest allowance of activities. So we're in the middle, right? Not as bad as it could be, not really very good, though, all things considered. 850 cases today, thereabouts. 53 in Ottawa. But nevertheless, a lot of health experts say you're playing with fire, Doug Ford. By even considering reopening the economy, don't do it, but he's gone and done it. The health authorities are saying it's a risk not worth taking because of the situation in the hospital, slow pace of vaccinations, unknowns about the new variants. But nevertheless, this is where we're at right now. We are reopening the economy. Caroline, go ahead, Caroline. Morning, Caroline.
How are you?
Good, Caroline. How are you?
I'm all right.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
So my comment is that they're only paying attention to some of the experts because there's been an increase in mental health issues, especially in kids. And so I think it is important that they open up with obviously restrictions, but because there's going to be long-lasting impacts on kids and adults.
Okay.
And so it's not just the economy, but
mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, all the things that is happening behind the scenes.
Anorexia has gone up through the roof.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And it's just been completely ignored. There's been a huge increase in kids going to CHEO for pill overdoses and things like that.
Oh, really?
I mean,
okay.
Yeah. So, I mean...
Yeah, the eating disorders, I just caught a news story the other day that people being diagnosed or suffering from eating disorders.
Well, there's been a huge increase in kids who have been
Why is that?
admitted into CHEO because it's causing heart problems and everything.
Oh, I see.
So it's not necessarily that they're treating the mental health part because there's so many of them, but it's basically the kids' way of, controlling something.
Oh, I see.
When
they feel they don't have a lot of control over their lives, this is something they feel they can have control over.
Exactly, and these issues are being completely ignored. So, I mean, yeah, we need restrictions to protect people, but at the same time, these impacts are going to be a lot longer. Social impacts, social development on kids, impacts on people who already have mental health issues and things like that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline, for your call. 750-1310, 750-1310. I mean, the health experts are saying it's too much, Doug, for it's too soon. It's not the thing to do. Playing with fire, playing with chicken, running with scissors, whatever, all of this bad stuff. But nevertheless, the local economy here, it's reopening a tiny little bit. It's far from any kind of return to normal. It is most welcome news for business owners who have put on this like merry-go-round from hell, something out of a Stephen King novel, for crying out loud, for the better part of the last year. I mean, it's been like close, open, close, open, close, open, close this much, open this much, close this. No, we're reopen that. Okay, well, you have better lobbyists than these guys, so you can reopen, but you have to stay closed. It's been, at times, just a complete debacle. But there's some good news. Less than 900 cases today. I guess that's a good number now. And in the last 14 days, according to Global News, the number of cases over the last 14 days is down 27% nationwide. Number of fatal cases down 41% in the last 14 days. So at a time when it can seem like good news is in short supply, that's a little bit of good news. Case counts down in the last 14 days, down pretty significantly, and deaths on the decline as well. But you have to wonder, is it a case of seen this movie before? Close things down, cases go down. Open things up, cases go right back up. And a month from now, are we all going to end up regretting this decision? That's my fear. Dean in Orleans. Dean.
Hi, Rob. Good morning.
Hi, Dean. Thanks for
just a little comment on your previous caller. That was a great call that
Caroline, yes.
That she mentioned. I think we look at things through a COVID lens way too much, and there's lots of stuff that we're forgetting. Forgetting that's gonna come up down the road. I think that we're not realizing right now. But on to the lockdowns.
Right.
I think we should open up everything, as safely, I guess, as we can.
Right. Okay.
And not continue with any more lockdowns anymore. I think it's just, I said from day one, or my opinion from day one was, it was completely unsustainable. You just can't be doing this for, we thought it might be for a few months, but now it's going to be, are we going to do this for years and years? I mean, it's just, it's insanity.
Yeah, I appreciate that. How many times can a business owner close, open? Okay, you can be open 25%. Okay, you can be open 50%. Oh, wait, cases are too high. We have to hit the emergency brake. You got to close again.
Yeah, now it's just a showpiece now for politicians. I mean, I think as time goes on, and we're going to have, probably thousands of people across the world in the next few years, just crunching these numbers economically, socially, medically and stuff, and figuring out, what worked, what didn't. I think in the end, we're, most places, most countries are going to end up in, pretty much the same position, regardless of what they did.
Well,
it might
maybe
take them longer, it might take them shorter.
Well, I think I think that it's the question is how far each one of them gets to the finish line, I guess.
And how, when are we going to start accepting risk in life?
Okay.
Everything has to be safe, and you talk about, the experts. I think we shouldn't be saying the experts. I think we should be saying some experts, because there's a lot of, people in different fields that have different opinions than the norm, than the
Sure. Yeah.
And we don't get to hear from them. They don't get enough attention paid to them.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah. Go ahead. Very quickly.
On these variants, now we're hearing about the variants. That's the new the new fear coming is the variants and the new third wave. When I think we've never been out of the first wave, it's just been continuing. But these variants, we're being frightened to death now about these variants. If you look at the cases in the UK and South Africa, they've gone down by 50, 60, 70% in the last month, and that's where these variants came from. I mean, I'm no medical expert, but why are we so scared about them when the countries basically that they came from are seeing a massive drop in cases?
Okay. Okay, good point. Good point. Beyond my scope to be able to answer that question, but I thank you all for your calls. That's the Talkback Hour. The news is coming up. Rob Snow Show, City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, February 17th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 15. In Smiths Falls, minus 13 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Province reporting another 847 cases of COVID-19 today, as well as 10 more deaths. That's province-wide. Now in the region, 53 new cases in Ottawa. One of them is a new variant strain. 3 new cases in both Eastern Ontario's health unit and Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. Renfrew once again reporting no new cases. The numbers come from about 34,000 tests completed province-wide. Only one health unit is reporting over 200 cases today. That is Toronto at 257. Ridership on OC Transpo has dipped even further. At the end of 2020, levels hovered around 28% of what was normal. In January, during the stay-at-home order, levels were at 18% of pre-pandemic. With ridership so low, the Confederation line is going to operate with 11 trains for the next couple of months. If ridership doesn't pick up, OC Transpo doesn't get additional funding from upper levels of government, they will start to cut some bus routes. City News time, 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Oh, we've got some cold wind chill to deal with this morning, but it won't be too bad for the afternoon. The high -7, and we'll have lots of sunshine for most areas today. Some clouds build for Smiths Falls for the afternoon. Tonight, partly cloudy, -18. It'll feel like -21 overnight. And tomorrow, a chance of flurries. Snow, though, overnight Thursday into Friday. Tomorrow's high, -4. For today, the high, -7.
And right now in Ottawa, -15. In Smiths Falls, 13. It does feel slightly colder in the wind. Canada Revenue Agency is not providing any clarity on the reason many Canadians have been locked out of their CRA accounts.
Don't be surprised if you see a lot of people on social media complaining about not being able to access their online accounts with the Canada Revenue Agency. The department confirms some taxpayers have had their emails removed from their accounts as a precautionary step for what a spokesperson describes as investigative work. The CRA has not responded when asked how many accounts are being impacted or what exactly this investigative work may be. The department says there's been no cybersecurity breach of CRA systems, and people impacted will get a letter in the mail informing them how to unlock their accounts. While there's no security breach, the department won't say if there was an attempted cyber attack. In the summer, a credential stuffing attack that affected tens of thousands of Canadians forced the CRA to temporarily shut down all of its online services. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 11:03. Ottawa police warning owners of high-end vehicles be on the lookout for theft. In just one night recently, 5 luxury vehicles were stolen in the Bridlewood area of Canada. There have also been multi-vehicle thefts in Crystal Beach and Orleans. Police say high-end vehicles like Highlanders and Tacomas are targeted. They have no suspect description. How many have been stolen? There were 200 of these high-end vehicles last year taken, 35 already this year. Police are asking high-end vehicle owners to report anything suspicious, even damage around your door handle you can't explain. Britain's Prince Philip has been admitted to London Hospital after feeling unwell.
Buckingham Palace says 99-year-old Prince Philip was transferred from Windsor Castle to London's King Edward VII Hospital Tuesday evening after feeling unwell. The palace characterizes it as a precautionary measure done under the advice of Philip's doctor. He's expected to remain in the private hospital for a few days of observation and rest. Philip retired from public duties in 2017. Tom Rivers, ABC News, London.
City News Time, 11:04. Baseball season about to get underway in Ottawa. The Ottawa Titans begin a 96-game season in the Can-Am division of the Frontier League on May 27th against Tri-City, the Valley Cats. The Titans are in with Quebec City, Trois-Rivières, Tri-City, New York, New Jersey, Sussex County, and Washington in their division of the Frontier League. Ottawa plays its home games at RCGT Park on Coventry Road. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's winter time and the weather's fine. The snow on the woods and field when I reveal my snowmobile. Thrill by gully and hill. Baby, it'll make you feel like an outdoor meal on a snowmobile. Listen to the sound of the bells go round when the winter carnival's here. And oh, what fun at the crack of the gun when the whole gang disappears.
Time for Valley View.
The race is on from the bush to the pond. And
Bruce McIntyre's here from the Eganville Leader. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Rob. You caught me.
Where have we caught you?
Well, I'm actually in my office at home. But
all right. Okay.
February 15th is my favorite day of the year. Valentine's Day, chocolate's half price. So you got me eating chocolate.
Oh, I caught you eating discounted chocolate. I ate a discounted chocolate purchased where? Just by out of curiosity.
This was purchased at the lovely Rexall Pharmacy.
Rexall Pharmacy and in downtown Renfrew, I'm guessing.
One of many stores open downtown.
Well, that's good. That's good. You're supporting local, Bruce. Good for you. I was actually, Bruce has sent me the latest copy of the Eganville Leader, and I wonder if this is actually a sign of spring, because on page 4 of the paper is an ad, which is nice enough to see in a newspaper these days. And it says, savings are snowballing at Afelsky Shoes in Barry's Bay. 30% off all winter boots and outerwear. So their winter clearance sale is on. So that must be a good sign, you would think, Bruce, right?
It's a very good sign. Yeah. I'm not a big rush to get there, but it's funny you mentioned that. I'm looking at page 20.
You're looking at page 20, okay.
of an ad, and it's for high school registration. I'm outside freezing to death, shoveling the snow, and they're doing high school registration for
high
December.
School registration. Wow. Okay. Look, I want to congratulate Bruce. Has been coming on my show for many years now and giving us all the news from up the line on a weekly basis. And the Eganville Leader has been nominated for 5 awards in the 2020 Better Newspapers competition sponsored by the Ontario Community Newspapers Association. So congratulations, because it is always a privilege just to be nominated, Bruce. I know you've won many awards in the past, you personally and the newspaper. So
it certainly is, and congratulations to my colleagues at the Leader. And it's funny you should mention that. I looked at it, the release, very quickly, and it's the first time that my name wasn't on there. It's like, oh, but then I realized, you know what, it's just more than me. And I looked at who was nominated from our staff this year. It's all new people. Not new, but they've been there, and they really haven't been recognized for their work. And I was so happy, so thrilled to see that, that my colleagues are already mentioned. There's also some freelance colleagues out there, people who we come to us with a story idea, and we will run with it, and they will usually write it, and we'll assist them, and that's been recognized as well. So we're very, very happy to Leader these days.
Yeah, congratulations. Now, one of the stories that we talked about the last time you and I were together on the program was this family in Pembroke that was auctioning off a 1915 Model T Ford for a raffle to raise money for a friend who requires a life-saving drug that's not covered by OHIP. And this story has a really interesting twist. So tell us a little bit more about this story, Bruce.
Once again, Rob, it just shows the generosity of the Valley. As you mentioned, the 1915 Ford Model T was auctioned off on the weekend by Mr. Briscoe, and the winner was of Ottawa, Yaffe Yasso. He is the one that walked away with the keys, battery charger, I think. And but he's very thankful, very grateful. He's going to raffle it off. He's going to enjoy it for one season, and then he'll put it up on the auction block, and away it goes.
And raffle it off again because he knows somebody who is also in need, and he wants to donate whatever funds he can raise from raffling off this car to help a friend of his, right? So
it is, and I guess that's Ottawa Valley way of saying pay it forward. So yeah, it's very, very good.
What a really neat thing. Maybe that can become a thing, you know. So
never know.
Yeah, sensational photography on the front page of the newspaper of another devastating fire in the Renfrew area. Tell us about this story, Kelly Homes.
Kelly Homes, it's a family business run on just outside of Day here. The family from Griffith. It's about an hour from Ottawa, and they were in the middle of getting ready for the spring launch of spring builds, and a huge fire took place last Tuesday, and it just destroyed the factory where they do the prefabs for the homes. So it was a big hit for them. You know, a local independent home builder, and this happened. So, but always the good news. Nobody was hurt, but they did lose a lot of property, a lot of damage to their inventory.
Gosh, it reminds me a lot of. I'm trying to think. A few years ago, there was a terrible fire that ripped through a similar type of business.
Are you thinking of the lumber yard?
The lumber yard, yeah.
Up in Pembroke a couple of years. That's when the power was knocked out.
Yeah.
And it affected, not only affected the plant, but it affected the entire city. It was 14,000 people without hydro for a while.
Yeah.
So a lot of fires. I was at a fire this weekend as well. Or sorry, not a fire. We were talking last week about Calabogie Road and the need for that underpass to be done. Well, I was at a collision there last Friday. Thankfully, again, no fatalities. And it actually wasn't at the intersection. It was just south of the intersection. But just shows the density of the traffic on a Friday. And 2 of the vehicles, 4 people hurt. One of the vehicles was full of ski poles. So I guess they were coming back from enjoying a day at Calabogie, and there's a crash. One was orange airlifted. Thank goodness for orange. It's used so many times in the county. And just goes to show that intersection, that area is just a firecracker waiting to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous driving through parts of Renfrew County. There's no doubt about that. Lots of people with lots of close calls, and you know you've covered some of the worst of it. there in your days.
And a lot of people get distracted not from their cell phones being used, but from the dark spots we have where your cell phone goes out and you're distracted looking for a signal.
Yeah. Or, people are speeding or they're pulling out to pass on a 2-lane highway. I mean, anything can happen, right? How, on the COVID side, what's the situation in the Valley, and how is the vaccine rollout plan going, such as it is for the Valley?
If it was a polka song, it'd be called "Roll Out the Polka." Roll the vaccine. We had a minor outbreak in Barry's Bay, and ironically, that is where the first round of COVID vaccinations were given, at the long-term care home.
Okay.
So when one person is diagnosed, declared an outbreak, it was a staff member. That is, so far, is under control. And as that is happening, the vaccination plan is in place now for the rollout of the vaccine. It'll be phase 2 taking place, and that will continue from March to August. And we're looking for it's the first of the big push to get everyone vaccinated up here.
Okay. Now, we talked the last time you were on the program about actually some family doctors moving to parts of Renfrew County. You remember? I think that was a week ago. I think it was a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Last week, right? Yeah, up near Barry's Bay. That's right. But the fact is, about 30,000 people in Renfrew County don't have a doctor. And they're encouraged to lobby the province to keep basically a pilot program going, which is kind of a substitute for a family doctor these days. Tell us a little bit about this program, Bruce.
Well, once again, Rob, it's the Ottawa Valley. It's the can-do attitude, and what you don't have, you create. And as you mentioned, 30,000 or 1/3 of the population by the end of this year will not have a primary physician. So, especially with COVID taking place last year, decided to try RCVTAC. And RCVTAC is Renfrew County Virtual Triage Assessment Center.
Okay.
And it started out with the paramedics would be on, working with the health unit. They would be on site. And if it was determined at a screening center that there was a need for a case, they would do it, and they would administer all of it. So it substituted for your call-ins, for your triage, for your questions, for your information. And it's free to call in, and it really is a lifeline for a lot of folks out there who don't have a doctor. So they'll call in, they'll speak to a healthcare practitioner, and it's a lifeline, and we want to see it continued. And hopefully the premier of the province will continue funding it.
Okay. Great to hear from you this week, Bruce.
Thank you, Rob.
We'll talk to you next week. And once again, congratulations to everybody, and good luck with the newspaper awards.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Yep. From the Eganville Leader and Valley View, that's Bruce McIntyre. This is the Rob Snow Show here on City News.
strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Researchers at McMaster University are working to develop a made-in-Canada COVID-19 vaccine candidate at a specialized facility in Hamilton. The university has a team of infectious disease experts, virologists, immunologists working on 2 new second-generation COVID-19 vaccines. And Professor Brian Lichty joins me now, Associate Professor of Pathology, Molecular Medicine, and Co-Lead of Vaccine Development at McMaster. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
Nice to hear from you. Where are you in the stage of development of these vaccines?
So we are in the midst of manufacturing the 2 vaccines. We should be done that by the end of March, and then we'll be talking to Health Canada about when we can start vaccinating volunteers.
So, clinical trials then would that? Okay. So, would that be a phase 1 clinical trial then, Professor? Or
it'll initially we'll have to start with a phase 1 because these are new vaccines that have not been given to humans before. So we will have to start a bit slow.
Okay.
But these things nowadays move quicker than they used to. So what we're funded to do right now is a 60-person initial study just to make sure that they're safe and that we induce the immune responses that we should. And if that all goes well, we can rapidly expand this to vaccinate more people later this year.
In reading about the lab, it's the Robert E. Fitzhenry Vector Laboratory at McMaster. I learned that it's the first of its kind in Canada. What makes it unique, this particular lab?
So we make vaccines that are based on viruses, which is a bit unique. The RNA vaccines you've heard about that are Moderna and Pfizer, that were the first out of the gate, they're not actually viruses, whereas the AstraZeneca vaccine, you've also heard about, I'm sure, it is a viral vectored vaccine. So that vaccine and our vaccine are based on a common cold virus called adenovirus. So there's only a few places now in Canada that can actually manufacture, and only on a small scale, viral vectored vaccines. It's a little trickier than simply synthesizing a vaccine. We have to grow up viruses in large quantities and purify them and put them in vials. And so that's a unique sort of technology that we've actually been doing this for 17 years.
Oh, okay.
But the facility was set up to do this only on a phase 1, phase 2 introductory clinical trial, level. We're looking at ways we could upgrade the facility and increase the number of doses. So right now, we're in the midst of making maybe as many as 100,000 doses of this first production run. We'll put some of that in vials and we'll treat some people, and then we can put the rest in vials and treat a lot more people. But we'd love to make, 1 million or more doses this year if we could.
And you have the capacity to do that in the facility?
Yeah, we can work in the tens to hundreds of thousands of doses right now, but we're looking at trying to figure out how to upgrade the facility to get into the million doses range.
Okay. What assistance, if any, has been provided by the federal government via research funding or what have you, sir?
So the clinical trial, so the actual manufacturing or the generation of, in the first place, the testing of and the manufacturing of our vaccines was funded by the federal government through the CIHR. So we received a grant to do that middle of last year.
Okay.
And so we've been plugging away at it ever since.
Yeah.
And I know there's analogous grants to other academic centers in the country that are working on their own second generation vaccines coming in behind the first ones out of the gate.
So let's work from the best case scenario because so much of the news is kind of doomy gloomy these days. So let's work from the best case scenario. Give me what the next few months looks like for you, and when, best case scenario, you could have approval and let's manufacture this and get as many shots into arms as we can. Give me that scenario.
Well, I guess the best case scenario is that we find out, this spring and summer that our vaccines work well in humans, and that we get a breadth of immune response against the several coronavirus proteins that are in our vaccine. And we're predicting that is, I will call it a more natural immunity against the coronavirus that may give people a level of not just the current strain, but also variants and in theory, even future pandemic coronaviruses that could arise in Asia. So if we see that we're getting the type of immune responses we'd like to see, and the vaccine's well tolerated, I'd love to be able to kind of, blow this up and make a lot more vaccine and get that into more people later this year and into next.
Okay. So again, it's called a viral vector vaccine, right? Okay. So a few questions about this. So we have the Pfizer and Moderna, as you said, which is this newer technology, messenger RNA technology. Kind of, we're all of us in journalism are doing like vaccine for dummies, right? So then you have the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is the Oxford was developed with the assistance of in partnership with Oxford University, right? And your vaccine candidate is more like that one, the AstraZeneca one.
Very similar.
Very similar. Okay.
The main difference is I like to refer to ours as a second generation because all of those ones you've mentioned, they only have one element from one gene from or one protein from the coronavirus. They have the spike protein, which is this a very important protein that's on the surface of the virus. It sticks out, so it's exposed, and we can vaccinate against that, and our body will make antibodies that bind to it and can prevent infection, and that works great, and it was the obvious first thing to do. But that's also the part of the coronavirus that the coronavirus is able to change over time as it adapts better to humans because it wasn't originally a human virus, and as there's selection for what are called immune escape variants. So, over time, as people develop immunity because they were infected or vaccinated, the virus may evolve, it may change to escape that, and what it'll probably change is that spike protein. So we've included two other proteins from the coronavirus that are much less able to change, are much more conserved across the variants and even potential pandemic viruses. And the idea there is that it may give people who've been vaccinated with our vaccine a level of immunity against the variants and future pandemic strains that will at least, help them deal with it when they're exposed to it and reduce the degree of infection and keep them out of the hospital, at least, it would be the goal, because that's the worry about this. The problem we keep running into is if case counts climb too high, there's this burden on the healthcare system that is really the problem we're trying to avoid. So
let me ask you a few quick questions just before we run out of time here. One dose or two?
So our trial's designed around two strategies. In one case, people who are so-called naive, they've never been vaccinated and never been infected, they'll get two doses. They'll get the first dose in their arm, and the second dose is inhaled like a puffer.
Oh, like a puffer. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we do that so that it calls the immune response into the lungs where you need it, rather than have the immune response is, remember, where they saw the pathogen. And we believe strongly that you want to have the immunity to COVID in your lungs. And so we'll be boosting by inhalation.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
And then there's another arm of people who have been previously vaccinated, and we will give them a puffer and see if we can improve their immunity in their lungs. Or people who were infected but didn't get very sick, because it's known that those people may not have very good natural immunity, and we want to boost that in their lungs.
And just very quickly, on storage, does it need ultra cold storage in a freezer or a refrigerator?
Yeah, it needs cold storage, the same as the AstraZeneca vaccine. So whatever infrastructure is in place to handle that vaccine would be suitable for ours. It's very similar.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Professor Brian Lichty, Associate Professor of Pathology and Molecular Medicine, the co-lead of vaccine development at McMaster University in Hamilton. 11:30 news, and then the latest on Line 5, the Enbridge pipeline, and what its closure could mean for Eastern Ontario. We'll talk about that coming up on City News.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, February 17th. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buck, and right now in Ottawa, nice bright sunshine and minus 13 with Smiths Falls at minus 11 under nice bright sunshine. Here's what's making news right now. Provincial health officials reporting 847 new cases of COVID-19 in the province and 10 new deaths due to the virus. The numbers out of over 34,000 tests. Locally, it's Public Health Ontario reporting 53 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa. Now, yesterday, the health unit confirmed 31 new cases. Elsewhere, it's 3 new cases for Eastern Ontario and 3 for Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases, again, for Renfrew County and District. The health units update their numbers in the afternoon. The operators of an Ottawa long-term care home say 2 employees have been dismissed over allegations a manager gave a dose of COVID-19 vaccine to his wife. The inoculation had been intended for a staff member at the facility. In a statement to City News, Riverstone Retirement Communities confirms it had completed an investigation into recent events and that 2 employees are no longer with the company. The statement goes on to say the focus will continue to be the health and wellness of our residents and employees. The allegations came to light last week after a member of the housekeeping staff who was expecting to receive a vaccine dose was instead told it had been given to a manager's spouse. The employees' union filed a grievance over the incident. Riverstone does not specify who was dismissed. The inflation rate rose from 0.7% in December to 1% last month. StatsCan reports gas prices are up 6.1%. Sale of new passenger vehicles also a driving factor behind the increase. CIBC senior economist Royce Mendez notes pockets of weakness are still evident in the economy, pointing to prices for hard-hit services such as airline fares that fell further during January. I'm Sarah Buchan for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
If you think gas prices are too high right now, imagine if Line 5 closes and what that would do for the price of gas. We had one analyst tell us on this program already it won't be the price of gas that you're worried about. It will actually be the availability of gas. Will you be able to get gasoline? Will Pearson Airport be able to get any aviation fuel, for example? My point being, it's a very big story. The impending closure, if it happens, there's some question about whether the governor of Michigan's really serious about this, but just how devastating would it be to the economy of Eastern Ontario if Line 5, the Enbridge pipeline, closes for good? David Beatty is the chair of the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission, and he joins me this morning in Brockville. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Rob.
It's very nice.
Thanks very much for having us on and highlighting this important issue.
Well, it's nice. It's nice to hear from you. How serious is it? How serious do you think the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, really is about this? This shutdown.
We have 12 short weeks to know how serious she is. Let's hope that in some sober second thoughts that she will reconsider and not shut down Line 5, because it would, as you mentioned, it would have devastating effects on fuel shortages. So you're right. It's not just the price. It's whether jets can fly out of Pearson. It's whether you can fill your gas tank up. Certainly home heating, the cost will soar, but are we going to freeze? You remember sort of the Eastern-Western debate many years ago. Let them freeze in the dark. Massive job losses.
Oh, really? Okay.
Massive. Okay. Sarnia alone will lose 5,000 high quality. They're the petrochemical capital of Ontario, as you know. Not just 5,000 direct chemical jobs will be lost, petrochemical jobs, but there'll be 24,000 indirect jobs lost. That's just in the Sarnia region alone.
So close to 30,000 direct and indirect jobs just in Sarnia.
Just in Sarnia region alone.
Wow.
And then look at
a lot of good jobs, a lot of union jobs too.
Those are wonderful, high-paying, skilled jobs. And it won't just hurt Ontario and Quebec. It will also hurt Michigan as well, because they get quite a bit of their propane and other fuel sources from the Line 5.
Now, I have called this pipeline. I'd like to know your take on it, Mr. Beatty. It's kind of the closest thing that we have to Energy East right now. A lot of the fuel that goes through there into the refineries in Sarnia and goes back out, a lot of it comes from Western Canada, right? And it comes into Sarnia. It's made into refined products, or it goes off into the refineries of Quebec, near Montreal, near Lévis, and more refined products are made. I mean, it's a crucial supply point and supply route for much of Eastern Canada and the densely populated cities of Ontario and Quebec. Would you agree with that assessment, sir?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. This is the energy lifeline for Eastern Canada. And can you imagine from an environmental there's 540,000 barrels per day that flow through, and we're talking about a 4.5 mile pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac.
Mackinac, yeah.
And that's the connecting portion between Lake Huron or Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. If we have to trade 540,000 barrels of oil through a pipeline, that's thousands and thousands of transport tanker trucks. That's hundreds and hundreds of rail tankers. That's several tanker ships going up and down the seaway. Mm-hmm. We can all remember a few years ago what happened at Lake Macquinac in Quebec.
Yes.
And this is probably the safest pipeline in all of North America. It was built in 1953 by the Bechtel Company with special pipe, seamless, an epoxy enamel coating. It is regularly inspected by divers, by ROVs, the underwater robots. It's consistently monitored. It today far, far exceeds any pipeline standards that we have.
Right. So your estimate is that if we lose Line 5 and the state of Michigan says that's it, it's closed, we're not going to allow it to be in use anymore. It's too environmentally dangerous, even though it's been in operation, since 65 years, right? You'd need 2,000 trucks, the big giant fuel trucks, right? The big transport trucks, right. 2,000 of them daily, I suspect.
Daily.
Right? Daily.
These are going up and down 401, 403.
Sure, yeah.
Highway 20 in Quebec.
Yeah. Or 800 rail cars.
Correct.
Every day. One way each day. Right. If you can find 800 rail cars right now. So the way things are. But there are other implications, far-reaching, including what you say your organization says are the two most chilling effects that make this even more difficult. And one is it creates an environment of volatility. And I would like to know what you think of, what you mean by that.
Well, anytime industry runs on fuel,
right?
We can all think that, our solar panels and our wind turbines are going to do the job. But for the next 20 to 50 years, we're still going to be a carbon-based, to a large extent, industry is going to be a carbon-based economy. The St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission is a collaboration between 7 municipalities, between Edinburgh Cardinal on the east and Leeds and the Thousand Islands on the west, right along the 401 corridor. That's why we're called the corridor.
Yep.
And attracting new jobs to the area is the only mandate of this corridor commission. So
the entire Seaway Valley becomes economically not as competitive as other areas because you don't even know the price of fuel or the availability of fuel. And how can you have an economy that runs like that, right?
And when you put a shadow of doubt, capital goes where there's certainty. And when there's no certainty, attracting capital and jobs become exceedingly difficult.
Yeah, and then, second to that is the higher cost, right? And if it's one thing that capital investment loves, it's a low barrier to entry. And anything that leads to a higher cost, either one will mean a lost capital investment, or it's going to mean costs that are just simply passed on down the line, right? They'll be passed on to consumers. So
yes. Yeah. And we all know that with higher costs, capital goes where it's most welcome. And there are already, Ontario has gone from an energy advantage 20, 30, 40 years ago to an energy disadvantage today. Already, our electric prices for in industry are far, far higher than New York, and as the further you go down south, the greater that discrepancy comes. Right. So if we start to add natural gas and other fuels and get that discrepancy even more, it definitely is going to hurt our industrial infrastructure.
Right. So a contingency plan in case of a closure, even a temporary one, would involve more trucks, more rail cars, maybe even more ships in the St. Lawrence Seaway, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Now
you can't do that year round, right?
Enbridge has proposed a solution.
Okay.
They are willing to think of the channel between England and France. They're willing to channel and put the pipeline underneath the seabed instead of on the lake floor to take away any environmental risk at all. And they're willing to pay that $500+ million tab to do that $4.5 million tunneling. So all we're asking Prime Minister Trudeau and Governor Gretchen Whitmer is to let Enbridge do what they say they'll do and give them time to do it.
I thank you very much for your interest in this topic and your advocacy on behalf of those who would be affected by this closure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Letting us highlight this.
Mr. Beatty.
All the best.
Yeah, that is David Beatty, Chair, St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Corporation. 11:45 on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to like the environment or to our bodies. We have like fun stuff, so like really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just like right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, like in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of like full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business at the same time, still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, like online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
I often say at City Hall today, but really nothing is happening at City Hall these days. They're all the councillors are in their spare living rooms or their spare bedrooms or their finished basements, their home offices, wherever they can find the space to do their thing, their Zoom meeting. And today is the Transit Commission. Now, it's very interesting. The chair of the Transit Commission, Alan Hubley, is speaking right now. I have not seen Councillor Hubley in person in a long time. He looks like Santa Claus now. He's got a big, long, gray beard.
Not willing to sit down with me. I want to make sure our time is
and
best
that's
used.
Councillor Brockington. And
Mr. Scrivener, is that possible?
Okay, just turn this down. It's interesting. I notice a lot of the councillors are becoming more creative with their backdrops. For example, Tim Tierney appears to be in some kind of field that looks like it's in The Sound of Music.
That's the stock, right? Like Microsoft 1997 Windows.
I'm expecting
background.
like sheep to go bouncing by. It's it's really quite something. Okay, Sue Sherring has been watching all of this unfold. Ottawa Sun columnist, good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning. Nice to be back.
So what's been happening with this Transit Commission meeting so far, Sue? You've been watching it?
Well, they've been spending a lot of time on, the state of the transit system, which is,
okay.
I guess sounds like stating the obvious, but, they're talking costs. There was an interesting... it was I just found it kind of sad. They talked about homeless people boarding the bus just to stay warm.
Oh, okay.
Which was really kind of gut-wrenching.
Really? Okay. Is that a big problem? Is that a new thing in Ottawa?
I think it's becoming more frequent. Well, the suggestion was more frequent because of COVID.
More frequent because of COVID. Okay. Oh, because they may be looking for a place to isolate, out. They don't want to be in a crowded shelter, in other words.
They don't want to be in a crowded shelter, and I think, with COVID, more people are not doing as well financially.
Sure.
So that was the implication I got out of it. So, I mean, they didn't go into a lot of detail about how they handle it, but I don't think I do believe it's still frowned upon despite people's needs.
People sleeping on buses and sleeping on trains or whatever the case might be. There was a time when they had the controversy about the Rideau Street bus mall, you remember? And
oh my gosh.
You remember they paid all of that money?
I do remember.
They paid all of that money to install these heated bus shelters all along in front of the Rideau Center. And then, gosh, Sue, it wasn't even very long after that. Like maybe that, lasted a year or two maybe before they tore it all down because it was heated and people were sleeping in there, So
I'm so mixed on all of that, but about the need, I mean, if people are in need of a...
Sure. Well, that's more, it's more of an indictment about, what kind of investments have you made in either expanding shelters, expanding capacity of shelters, the availability of affordable housing, affordable housing in Ottawa in general, where a house is costing $740,000 now in the city. So, there are a whole bunch of issues that are intermingled there, aren't there? But in terms of ridership and getting people, getting ridership levels back to anything that resembled pre-COVID. I mean, is that happening? Have they gone over anything like ridership?
Well, I mean,
is it rebounded at all?
Clearly, no, it's not rebounding. It's still very low. I mean, again, as you say, it's because of COVID, and a lot of people are working from home. I mean, as has been discussed before, on the upside, it's giving them a chance to sort of hope that they can work out some of the kinks. I'm not, I have my concerns about the transit system, as I'm sure John Manconi does and Alan Hubhley does.
Yeah.
I think it's working better, but that's because people aren't using it. So.
Yeah, at least it seems to be, not that anybody's noticing because ridership is so low, but it does seem to be a lot more reliable this winter than it was last winter.
Yes, but I don't.
There was a lot of room for improvement there, of course. So.
I don't think anyone in Ottawa can take comfort in that fact, because once the city gets back moving, I'm not sure that I don't think we have any proof that OC Transpo's transit system is going to work better.
Okay.
Maybe it will, but the test of transit is when people in the city across the city are using it. Yeah.
Now, one of the things I'll be interested in, I heard on the news this morning, they're starting this program where it's like a touchless payment system, right? And that would go well beyond the Presto card and, debit card, credit card, whatever you need to use to pay your transit fare. Touch and go. And I thought, my goodness, I can't believe they're going that way. I told them, don't do the Presto card. Do you remember Presto card, Sue? That was that was one of the original McGinty liberal boondoggles at the time, and how we had totally had that shoved down our throats, the Presto card.
Yeah. Do you remember how much that cost?
It was almost, by the time it was all up and running, remember Ottawa had to adopt the Presto card system along with all the major municipalities.
Yes.
And there was some, Bob Shirelli would never say it, but there was some pressure put on the city. You have to do this or you may not get the provincial gas tax money, right?
Yes.
It was supposed to, when it started, and they first announced Presto, it was going to cost $150 million. It took more than 10 years. And after 10 years, it was still not ready, and it was more than $900 million. It was more than 900, and in the end, it took 12 years from start to finish before they had all the kinks worked out. Do you remember? They would get error screens, and the drivers would get error screens, and they would just say, forget it, just board the bus. I don't even care if you're Presto card.
Get on.
And whatever. Yeah, and here they are. I don't know, how long ago was that Presto finally got going, like 2018, and 2 years later, they're like, let's go to a touchless system that will still use Presto. And I'm like, still use Presto? We just got it working 2 years ago. What are you talking about? Oh, my gosh. Anyway, David has a clip here. This is from the Queen's Park question period. Now, I know you don't comment a lot on Ontario politics, but just play what Doug Ford said to Andrea Horwath today during the question period.
Rather than sending inaccurate information out to the public and hurting the public, why don't you come and join us to support the people of Ontario for once, rather than just sit there and criticize. It's like listening to nails on a chalkboard, listening to you.
Oh, my gosh. So that was during the Queen's Park question period. He said to Andrea Horwath, why do you keep well, she's the official opposition leader, first of all. It's her job to why do you keep criticizing me? But then he said, he didn't say your voice. He said, it's like nails on a chalkboard with you. Do you think that's sexist? He's being accused of being sexist.
Oh, yeah, I kind of do.
You kind of do, eh? Okay. All right. Okay. That's where we end it then. You'll enjoy that discussion on Twitter,
Well,
Sue.
then I would have been more emphatic.
Okay. You are not like nails on a chalkboard. Okay.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.